Drop it. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola, Hasan Piker. Good to have all you guys here.
First ever first hour panel for me, I think.
Oh, is that right?
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to handle the political commentary portion of the show, but try my best.
It's fun to try new things from time to time.
Yeah. Hour 1 and hour 2 have almost no distinction. So that's from the old days. Okay, so, and we do have an hour 3 for you guys here on Friday. We do members only post games for a whole hour. So check that out at tyt.com/join. I've got a great update for you guys on a program that we launched yesterday that involves you guys, which I love. It's a great update. And we've got campaign news, of course, especially on impeachment. But one of my favorite stories of the day is John Iadarola versus that NRA dude. I can never, is it Bongo? What is it?
I think that's it.
Okay.
It's Bongino.
Bongino?
Yeah, Bongino.
Fun fact, he blocked me on Twitter because I asked him to leak his steroid routine. Oh, after threatening to sue me. I'm asking. You could say I don't take any steroids.
Fun fact, he blocked me before we'd ever spoken on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that is fun.
I don't even know how he knew who I was.
Nothing says brave guy like owning a bunch of guns for some hypothetical scenario in which sickos are gonna come into your house and kill you. And also blocking people ahead of time on Twitter.
Yeah. So, well, no, but you're gonna love that story because John's clapbacks, as it were, are fantastic.
I mean, sure. I'm interested in the facts. That's all I'm interested in. So hopefully we can learn something from all this.
All right. Well,
and his
who are you gonna
steroid routine potential.
Also that.
Okay.
If he has one.
We know nothing about that. All right,
Okay.
John, what's next?
Let's turn to the big news of the morning. With a vote being held this morning, we are now one step closer to Donald Trump potentially being impeached. The House Judiciary Committee voted to approve 2 articles of impeachment against him, paving the way for votes in the full House of Representatives next week that could make him only the 3rd president in history to be impeached. Now, if that does happen, it will then move to the Senate, where Mitch McConnell will listen with an open mind to the evidence that will be presented. I can't keep it up, I'm not that good an actor. But he does have plans though. And so he joined Sean Hannity last night as a sign of how seriously he's taking this entire thing. And here is what he had to say about his strategy.
Everything I do during this, I'm coordinating with White House counsel. There will be no difference between the president's position and our position as to how to handle this. To the extent that we can. We don't have the kind of ball control on this that a typical issue, for example, comes over for the House. If I don't like it, we don't take it up. We have no choice but to take it up, but we'll be working through this process, hopefully in a fairly short period of time, in total coordination with the White House counsel's office and the people who are representing the president in the well of the Senate. Well, exactly how we go forward, I'm going to coordinate with the president's lawyers. So there won't be any difference between us on how to do this. Again, I'm going to take my cues from the president's lawyers.
It's checks and balances.
That famous thing that Congress is supposed to do. Yeah, I'm really glad that they're just mailing this one.
Yeah, I have to think that somewhere underground, the bodies of the founders are just like clapping a little because things have worked out exactly how they hoped.
So, look, guys, one of the things I'm amused by is that Republicans often say, and they have said it a lot about this impeachment proceedings, I can't believe how political the Democrats are. It looks like they're not even considering the evidence with any degree of impartiality. And then McConnell comes out and goes, oh no, I'm not gonna consider the evidence at all. I'm already working with one side. Remember, the senators are supposed to be the jurors in the trial in the Senate. You impeach in the House, and then the House sends House managers over to the Senate to prosecute the case, and the senators are supposed to be the jury. From time to time, if a Democratic senator has said anything about, well, I'm troubled by Trump, they're like, what are you doing to see? He's not being impartial. He's not being impartial. Now McConnell comes out and goes, of course we're not gonna be impartial.
Yeah.
Not only that, I'm going to take my orders from the White House, who is on trial. Okay, I mean, could you imagine if jurors in the rest of the world did that? They're like, we just want to let the judge know ahead of time. We will be voting with the defendant under any and all circumstances. But anyway, let's have fun and do a trial.
I think a third-party investigator needs to come in and take a look at what's going on in this impeachment proceeding, and then maybe do a potentially violent coup in America. That's what we do normally when it happens in Bolivia or other developing nations in Latin American countries. We're like, oh, wait a minute. This seems like there seems to be some trickery going on in your elections process or in your constitutional process. I don't really like it. We're gonna make sure that we now facilitate a right-wing coup in your country, killing multiple people. That's okay when we do it, though.
Let's just be clear. You are being sarcastic there.
I'm being sarcastic. That was not an endorsement.
I would never. Some people, it's sarcasm. It's hard for some people to understand.
I know. I would never endorse the disgusting foreign policy of our imperialist state.
Yes.
So,
but it's a ridiculous state that we find ourselves in because, like, they share a party. We know that he's going to have his back, but hypothetically, like, he's an old man who's worked his entire life on this career as a politician. He's risen to an incredible level of power, heading up the Republican Party in the Senate, and he is effectively saying, whichever like reality TV star we put in as president, just talk to him. He can do whatever he wants. I'm not gonna get involved.
Yeah,
because he got what he wanted already.
Yeah, to Haas's point, putting the kidding aside, it does show the hypocrisy of what the US does from time to time, especially the Republican Party. When they say, well, look, if other countries have not followed the process of their constitution, have not followed and had fair processes in different ways, they say, well, that justifies a violent overthrow of their government. Now, it's preposterous when we do it in Latin America, obviously it would be preposterous here, but just the hypocrisy of them saying, we don't care about the law, the Constitution, or any of the normal democratic processes. We're just going to do whatever is right for our party instead of our country. It's overwhelming. If any Democrat had said 10% of what Mitch McConnell just said, all the Republicans and all the media would go absolutely nuts. Can you believe these Democrats are not being impartial jurors? So if you think the fix is in, yes. But I will disagree with one thing that a lot of the reporters are saying. They then turn around and go, so then it's a foregone conclusion that Trump will be acquitted in the Senate. No. It depends on how long it takes. So right now, this is Mitch McConnell saying, I just checked my polls, I think I'm still okay. And Chuck Schumer, in his infinite stupidity, as usual, has put up a super weak opponent against me. So I think I'm gonna be all right. So I'm backing Donald Trump. And he says, I don't think any of the Republicans are gonna break with us, and maybe the Democrat, a couple of Democrats might. You never know with Democrats, they're craven, they might. But in terms of the Republicans not breaking, no, he cannot guarantee that at all. It all depends on their poll numbers in their home states when they're up for re-election. That is the only thing that matters. And if anyone reports anything otherwise, just understand they don't understand politics.
Why don't we go to Mitch McConnell effectively making the prediction? So perhaps someday you'll be able to laugh in hindsight, but here's what he had to say last night.
The case is so darn weak coming over from the House. We all know how it's going to end. There's no chance the president's going to be removed from office. My hope is that there won't be a single Republican who votes for either of these articles of impeachment. And Sean, it wouldn't surprise me if we got one or two Democrats. It looks to me over in the House, the Republicans seem to be solid and the Democrats seem to be divided.
Do you see any possible defections?
I doubt it. There's a zero chance the president obviously would be removed from office, and I'm hoping we'll have no defections at all.
Okay, so all that video, as well as video we can't show you right now, but it was him talking about the strategy of blocking Obama's judges in the last year, and then he laughed. It's one of the creepiest things I've ever heard. Just bear all that in mind when Jerk of the Year time rolls around.
Yeah, so McConnell gonna McConnell, right? And so, by the way, it's the job of the Democrats to fight back. Somebody, for God's sake, step up to the plate. I mean, this guy is the heart of corruption. All he ever does is take bribes from corporate contributors and the NRA and sell out the American people over and over again. Are you ever gonna fight back against this monster named McConnell?
And this is supposed to be the issue that unites moderates and the left and liberals, okay? So this is it. This is an erosion of the constitutional checks and balances right before our eyes. It's not the first example, especially when it comes to McConnell. He's been doing this very transparently for some time now. It showcases very perfectly that the Republicans have no interest in defending the Constitution. I'm not even super fond of the Constitution myself. But hey, if you constantly talk about how we need to defend American democracy and how the Democrats are real patriots, you have to step up. At what point will we actually push back on any of this in a serious way?
Yeah, look, I am a fan of the Constitution, but the Democratic Party should be all over this clip. It's always the sound of silence. They should come out and say Mitch McConnell has obviously abdicated his responsibility to the Constitution. We're looking for him to step down out of his role. The Republicans should appoint someone who is impartial. In fact, maybe he should recuse himself from the entire trial, since he has declared ahead of time that he will under no circumstances be an impartial juror.
Yeah.
See, that would be a strong response. They always say, there's nothing we can do. No, there's a lot you can do. You're just choosing not to fight McConnell.
Yeah. And I also think that we need to do something, but it has to be pretty urgent. I think that this should be treated similar to climate change. This is not a problem that can be solved in 20 or 30 years. What's up?
I mean, it is being treated similar to climate change. Like,
we're denying that it exists?
Yes.
Yeah, because the issue is that Mitch McConnell has apparently figured out, and Trump figured out, that his voters, these conservatives who say that they love the Constitution, they love democracy and all that, they don't care about any of that. They want what they want, and they don't care if American democracy has to be run through a shredder to get it. The blatant lie about you can't confirm Obama's judge in the last year. Just last night he told Sean Hannity that he's going to, in the last year, put through Trump judges. And there's no price to be paid on the right for that. They don't care about hypocrisy, they're not interested in that. They don't care about, democracy is convenient if they believe that they can still win through it. And thanks to gerrymandering, the way that the Senate is structured, a lot of things like that, for the time being they can, but they are already prepared to move past that. Look at the opinion polls. The support for some alternative to democracy is rising steadily on the right. And why wouldn't it? They've seen that they have people like Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump that can win while having no respect whatsoever for the system of government we're supposed to have.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, well, why don't we take our first break? When we come back, we're gonna turn from the troubles we're having here to, I hear the UK's having a rough time too.
Oof.
Yeah, all right, we'll talk about that and what actually went wrong when we return. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Jenny writes in, hello from Canada, fellow TYTers. Hey Jenny, how you doing? Bernie Bros writes in, thank you to whoever added that Cartman quote in the opening, genius. My gay marriage, that's who?
That would be Bart, I'm sure.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Oh, I got you, right.
That's what he does.
My gay marriage writes in, is it normal for jurors to coordinate with the defense? I thought the Republicans have been crying about this process not following court norms. Exactly right, thank you for writing in. And last one is from Twitter. Eddie O'Donnell writes in, so he's not a senator for the American people. He only takes things he likes to the floor. Got it, good to know. I know we're all really shocked McConnell is like this. There's a couple of bills that McConnell is steadfastly refusing to vote on. One is, of course, gun control. And another is the federal minimum wage. It passed the House, but he will not bring it up for a vote.
Paper ballots
in the Senate.
Securing our elections. That's another one.
A lot of stuff.
Yes, that's because Mitch McConnell hates higher wages for the average American.
The problem is that, as the people who oppose him, there's no way for us to use that information to hurt him.
Yeah, I wish there was.
We've been trying to come up with something, but drawing a blank.
He's ironclad. Can't do it. Teflon.
Okay, can I just before we jump into back into the news, I wanted to let everyone know that you're probably familiar with our live stream and watching TYT content on YouTube, Facebook, places like that. But you can also enjoy our content in a number of other locations, including Comcast, Xfinity X1, and Xfinity Flex, Pluto TV, the Roku channel, YouTube TV, Zumo, and of course TYT.com. As a note, TYT will no longer be available on Hulu after December 20th, but don't worry because you've got all of those different places to enjoy our content. Visit the How to Watch page on TYT.com for more information. And with that, why don't we jump back into the news? Last night, potentially the most important election in the UK for a very long time, and it did not go well. for the left. The British electorate voted Thursday, resulting in a 78-seat parliamentary majority for Boris Johnson and the worst showing for the opposition, the left-wing Labour Party led by Jeremy Corbyn, in nearly 100 years. You take a look at a graphic from the New York Times showing how the vote ended up going down. And you can also see in this next graphic the share of the electorate, how it's shifted over the past 4 years, with the conservative share trending up ever so slightly with each election.
Yeah, so last time I made a prediction before the British elections and said that Corbyn could win. People said you're preposterous. He has no chance. He was 20. I believe he's 24 points behind with 6 weeks left to go. He closed it down to 4 and nearly won last time. This time I did not make any such prediction. Why? Well, several different things have happened, and we might disagree a little bit on the panel here on this. I don't know, but one is I think we'll all agree on. Is there's been nonstop propaganda against Corbyn from the right, the left, the media. Every single person in power is united against Corbyn in the UK. And so how much of that propaganda can anyone withstand is a good question. And now it's been years and years and years of he's the worst, he's wrong. The right wingers are right, he's wrong. The corporate people are always right, okay, whether they're right on or the left. This is true, unfortunately, in way too many countries. But the biggest factor is that he was not running against an establishment candidate. Now, Boris Johnson's a complicated figure, obviously been in politics a long time in the UK, but he is known to be more of a populist. So the reason I said Corbyn would do well in the last elections, but not necessarily in this one, is because it's not about left versus right. It's about populist versus establishment. And so the right-wing populists in the UK had a clearer message this time around, just like the fake right-wing populist Donald Trump did in 2016 versus the establishment candidate Hillary Clinton. So populism won again. It was just a more coherent propaganda-backed populism that the right wing presented in the UK. So that is the dynamic that is playing out in every election and now several times in the UK itself. And then finally, look, Corbyn is significantly to the left of anyone in American politics. So there were some issues that I certainly didn't agree with. And so I don't want to get into like nitpicking, especially now that the election is over, et cetera. But I don't want anybody to think that, oh, he has the same views as Elizabeth Warren, right? No, he was way to the left of Warren, Bernie Sanders, et cetera. Because right now the propaganda now in the corporate media in America is Corbyn and Sanders were the exact same thing. So I guess let's make sure we go with Biden.
So we're gonna have some examples of that.
Can I push back on some of the stuff that he said, or should I wait?
Yeah, no, go for it now.
Okay, one. Of course, people are cynically using this Labor defeat as a way to attack Bernie Sanders, not as much Elizabeth Warren, but definitely Bernie Sanders. And there is no Brexit parallel in America, and this was the Brexit election. It's a really silly parallel to engage in. It's just a cynical attack. These people don't know what they're talking about. If anyone ever says like, oh, well, Bernie Sanders versus Jeremy Corbyn, they were both too leftist, too far left, and that's why we need to go back to the center, like Michael Bloomberg pointed out recently, this is incorrect. One, because of what I just mentioned as far as the Brexit parallel, Jeremy Corbyn did not have a consistent position on this, and he also was stuck between a rock and a hard place because Labor, his own party, was also split on remaining or leaving. He was more of in the leave camp originally, but then he had to concede to the remainers in his own party.
Let me just pause real quick there to say Hasan's 100% right about that. And when you can't straighten out your own message within your own party, you're in a world of trouble in an election.
So he thought potentially he could win the best of both worlds. Maybe some Lib Dems who were also interested in remaining. He ended up losing to both parties. So that was a terrible decision, I think, and I criticized him early on as well. But he also was in a really uniquely terrible situation. But most importantly, as a consequence of all of the overwhelming anti-Corbyn message directed by everyone in the most coordinated, most deliberate smear campaign I've ever witnessed in my entire life and throughout history, Jeremy Corbyn's popularity diminished versus Bernie Sanders is currently the most popular politician. I think the fourth most, like he goes up and down in the polls, but like he has the highest approval rating highest favorability rating out of any politician running right now, higher than Joe Biden even. So Jeremy Corbyn on the other hand was deeply unpopular. So there is no parallel between Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn. And I love Jeremy Corbyn. I think he was great, but unfortunately, the people of UK did not feel the same way about him.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I agree with Hasan's analysis. We've had a 2-hour debate about capitalism versus socialism on Agitprop, which is one of our shows for members. You should check that out. TYT.com/join, become a member, check that out. So he agrees with Corbyn more than I do, and that's our political disagreement. But in terms of analysis, I think he's spot on.
And his policies were popular as well. So that's the other unique situation here, is that the UK is technically supposed to be more to the left when it comes to economic issues than the United States. As we know, they have a fully nationalized healthcare service. Now, the best indication that his policies were popular is 9 years of austerity have caused the NHS to suffer significantly, so much so that even the Tories were lying basically about how they were gonna finally fund the NHS. Three days before the election, Boris Johnson was like, oh, we're gonna put more money in the NHS. We didn't do it for 9 years, we're gonna do it now. And the media backed it. The media never questioned it. The media refused to talk about the potential collusion between America and Donald Trump and Boris Johnson's camp on privatizing certain aspects of the NHS as a consequence of the post-Brexit like trade deals that they need to engage in. So the media was absolutely colluding. And the reason why I'm mentioning this, the reason why I'm stressing this is because this is going to happen in America. It's already been happening, but it's definitely going to become a larger issue that we on the left need to be aware of and need to figure out a way to push back against, because as Bernie starts winning some key primaries, we are going to see a lot worse attacks. It's already started. The Federalist was asking people whether or not Bernie Sanders was an anti-Semite because he endorsed the Labor Party. Like, insane, just insane, and they will do it. These people are all ghouls, okay? They will do this. So get ready and figure out ways immediately to push back against this.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm gonna jump back a little bit to something earlier you were saying. It's harder to campaign when you're trying to, to appeal to two groups that are at loggerheads over the most important issue being debated, whereas Boris Johnson had a much easier job of just trying to appeal to people who want to get the hell out of there and they don't care how it happens. But at the same time, one of the things that Labor ran up against was the two sources of information that people should be able to rely on to go into the voting booths knowing what's actually going on. They couldn't. You rightly point out that much of the mainstream equivalent media there was just hyped with attacking Corbyn. That's what they were using their time on. They didn't have time to fact check the Conservative Party. And the Conservative Party was taking advantage of that with the other form of media, online ads and things like that. We covered a study on the damage report, 88% of their ads had documented falsehoods in them. Just clear, obvious falsehoods, like how many hospitals are you saying that you're gonna build? They would say 40 in an ad, they never actually said that. All their public speeches said 6. They were lying about the priorities of the Labor Party, where they were gonna put money, all of that, and it didn't get fact checked. The online people who are, the online platforms that are promoting these ads, they're taking money, they don't care to actually fact check it. And the media didn't care enough because they were busy demonizing Corbyn.
Yeah, corporate media not being fair and honest, and the Conservative Party lying in ads. Wow, that does sound really weird. I'm sure we wouldn't say anything like that here in the US.
So why don't we turn now to, we started to allude to, people are trying to learn something about America from this election. I would say learn the right lessons from 2016 before you start trying to apply other countries' electoral lessons. But Joe Biden had this to say: look what happens when the Labor Party moves so far to the left. He goes on. He goes on to say, it comes up with ideas that are not able to be contained within a rational basis quickly. Yes, I am taking advice on how to be rational and together from Joe Biden, but he's saying basically they did the same thing. They're promising things that they couldn't possibly do.
Yeah, Joe, I don't know if you know this. I literally am not positive you know this. You're in the Democratic Party. The Republicans are supposed to criticize the left, not you. You're in the party that is the left, or at least is supposed to be. So, I mean, what an insane situation. Labor Party is very roughly analogous to the Democratic Party here in America. And a guy who's vying to be the head of the Democratic Party and their nominee turns around and goes, ha ha, look at how Labor lost, yes!
Well, there is a party that's analogous to the Democratic Party of the United States in the UK. It's called the Lib Dems, and they are deeply unpopular. So yeah, if you want to take any sort of like serious lessons from what not to do, don't be like the Lib Dems.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and also, like, we're allowed to speculate about what a strong progressive candidate could do as a presidential candidate. And the reason we can do that is because we've never had one. So all we can do is speculate. But I love people like speculating about something that we have actual evidence on. Joe Biden's saying the way you lose to the far right is you run a far leftist. The way you win, obviously, then, is to run a centrist like we did in 2016. We have the evidence from 2016. Why are you pretending that we don't know what happens when you run a centrist against Donald Trump?
Yeah, there's no question about it. But it's like, look, Biden does it. He's running and he's a centrist. I get why, his motivation at least. Corporate media, where are you? Has anyone in the media ever said, hey, we ran just what John just said. We ran a centrist, or the Democrats ran a centrist against Donald Trump and the centrist lost. That's simple fact. Almost never in the discussions of the context of who is more likely to defeat Donald Trump. I have seen thousands of articles written about that. And I'm not sure I've ever seen a single reporter say, oh, by the way, we know one thing, centrists already lost to Donald Trump. Never. Yeah. It's amazing. They have their own alternative facts.
Hell, go back to 2004. We did the same thing then. Go to 2000. I mean, Al Gore, compared to some, good on some of the issues, but he wasn't a crazy, wild-eyed liberal.
Yeah, John Kerry.
Like, we've done this many times.
Hey, let's be safe, guys. John Kerry, okay? John Kerry's a good centrist Democrat, and he's and
military record.
Yeah, and so the Republicans will respect that he's reaching out to them. Blah blah blah. No, loses to an unlosable idiot like George W. Bush. Hillary Clinton loses to an even more unlosable idiot like Donald Trump. By the way, so when did Democrats win? Barack Obama came in and said, I'm a progressive, whether you believe him or not. But then at the time we did, and he said change and hope, and I'm going to do big change, big change.
Well, to be fair,
and people voted for big change against who? Against Hillary Clinton. But no, the mainstream media will never acknowledge the simplest political facts in this country.
Technically, the slogan was hope and change for those who want it. To be fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, are we done with this or?
It's up to you. Do you have something to say?
Oh, I always have something to say.
Okay, well, let's hear it.
There is just so much more to say about this issue, especially because look, like I need to stress this. Okay, they're coming for Bernie Sanders. It's going to happen, and we need to stop listening to the woke scolding. We need to stop listening to the cynical attacks launched against progressives. They did this with Ilhan Omar. They're going to keep doing it. They're going to do it to Bernie Sanders over and over again. We need to be able to fight back. And unfortunately, just like in the UK, there was no left-wing media to push back against this. Donald Trump gets attacked fairly, and sometimes I would even say a little too far and unfairly by a largely liberal mainstream media, by the press, right? But he has Fox News. He can go to the largest and most popular news network in the country, and they will promote his agenda. They will defend him relentlessly. So we are running a grassroots campaign. This is going to be a very difficult battle, but it's going to happen. Just stay strong and don't believe these cynical smear merchants who happily defend Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and would even go so far as to defend friends of Jeffrey Epstein because they're in positions of power. Yeah. They do not have any sort of loyalty to anything but capital, and that's it.
So why don't we turn to more of the primary, actually, an update on Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders brags that he has not received any money from billionaires, and you can sort of understand why that would be a point in his favor in this primary. The View recently discussed this policy, and they did not all agree that that was a good thing.
So Bernie Sanders has boasted that he's the only candidate to not accept campaign donations from billionaires. But that policy is not going over too well with his competition. Well, he's the only one who's been able to really get this sort of like grassroots money coming towards him, $25, $10. The others can't. He's the only one who was able to pull it off, it seems, right? Who else has done that?
Money has been in politics for a really long time. Rich people have been sort of running the world and the world of politics for a really long time. I it just is what it is, in my opinion. And since Citizens United, the Supreme Court basically said that a limit on money is a limit on free speech. And so there's just been so much money in politics. Yeah. I don't understand now why people are like, oh, now you've got these Democratic billionaires, spending so much money. It's not fair. It's just kind of been the way of the world for a really long time.
So I'm gonna admit up front that I don't watch The View very often, but the few times that I've seen a clip, I've seen Sonny go toe to toe with Meghan McCain and say things that make a lot of sense. That entire thing was it was the saddest political, just fatalism. Yeah, the rich have always been in charge, so what are you gonna do? I don't know, something about it so that it doesn't continue for the rest of our lives? Bernie Sanders seems to have a plan, and we just talked. In the intro, they talked about how it's benefiting him in terms of grassroots support for his candidacy. So to respond with yeah, but they're powerful. I don't know. What are you gonna do?
This is what happens when only 11% of your country is participating in labor unions. Okay, our workforce has no infrastructure to make demands against capital. There are many different outcomes of this that we talk about quite frequently on this show as well. For example, productivity rates increasing tremendously over the course of the past 40 years, while wages have remained stagnant. And that is all the ongoing dynamic between capital and labor. Workers have certain interests, bosses have different interests, or owners of the business have different interests. And if they have all the money and they have a higher concentration of wealth and power and they can buy out politicians, then whose demands are people going to hear? Are they going to hear the workers or are they going to hear the bosses? They're of course going to hear the bosses. And it's unimaginable to them because they have no way, they have no history of fighting back against this in recent times. The last time we had any sort of serious grassroots uprising was Occupy Wall Street, which was largely vilified and turned into a spectacle by our, again, corporate media. So there is no infrastructure. We need to build that, which is part of the reason why I love Bernie Sanders, is because it's more so about a movement and not just electing a singular person into a position of power. And I think that's what's really important. No matter what happens, we need to have stronger unions in this country. We need to restore power back to the average citizens in this country. Black, white, yellow, gay, straight, doesn't matter, every single person. And we need to organize and we need to make demands and we need to ensure that our government finally starts working for us and not for the 1%.
So let me agree and disagree with that clip a little bit. First of all, I agree with their wonderful Christmas spirit. Man,
that set looked fun.
Yeah, that set was very Christmas. I liked it. I love Christmas. All right,
get some trees in here.
So now, kidding aside, let's get to the substance. First of all, they're right about the malady. The politics is drowning in money, and I'm not against billionaires per se, so I don't know if that means I disagree with Bernie on that. But Tom Steyer is not a guy that I'm going to vote for in this presidential primary, but he's done amazing work on fighting for the environment, against climate change disaster that we're in. He's actually put a lot of money into grassroots progressive work. So if you have a billionaire who's putting money to empower people and to spread a progressive message. And by the way, during the run, he's constantly talking about how corporations rule our government and they have too much corporate power, and that is absolutely right. So I applaud that. I don't have any problem with that. I prefer Bernie Sanders as a candidate, but I think that Steyer is being helpful there. On the other hand, the real issue, as Sonny points out, but then gets too defeatist about, is it's not just 1 or 2 billionaires running for office. The much bigger problem is that we allow for wholesale auctions rather than elections. So people can give as much money as they want through dark money, through super PACs. Sheldon Adelson has bragged about putting $30 million into a candidate, $50 million to support a candidate. So this is absolutely unbelievably outrageous. The system is outrageous. The system is corrupt. But of course, the part I disagree with is you can't just throw your hands up and say there's nothing we could do. No, there's a lot you can do. You can organize, you can work together, and you can actually pass an amendment to solve this. That's what Wolfpack's trying to do, wolf-pack.com, okay? And so if you sit on your couch and accept defeat, you will have defeat. If you rise up, every generation of Americans has actually gone and made a giant difference. We've had amendments go in droves. They go in 3 to 4 blocks to go one after another once amendments begin. Every generation says amendments are impossible, then they do 3 or 4 of them. Okay, so they give you that mythology so that you never fight back. Don't believe the hype. Go fight for an amendment to get money out of politics and publicly finance all elections right now.
And you mentioned 2 forms of ways that they can corrupt the process, and we're experiencing both literally right now. As we speak in Iowa and New Hampshire, Steyer to a lesser extent, but now Bloomberg to a much greater extent, they are running millions and millions of dollars worth of ads. And they might in the end get a couple of percentage points from it. Perhaps never before has as much money been spent to move a needle as little as it will be moved. And yet they can be taken seriously and they can make it onto the debate stage because of that. I agree, I like Steyer a lot more than Bloomberg, but I don't think that he got those donations organically. The way it was set up to make sure that people have a base of support, and we saw that you can game the system.
I don't know why people trust Steyer when he literally built the largest dono email list he could by creating the anti-Trump thing that he did and blasting ads even before, years before he ever said he was going to run for president. Back then I was like, this guy is going to run for president, and that's precisely why he's building this anti-Trump list so that he can hit them with the inevitable presidential nomination, and he can start building a grassroots backed billionaire candidacy. Look, if you feel sad, I just want you guys to remember one thing, okay? If you feel like things are looking really poorly, or things are looking really bad, there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen.
Yeah, it's a great point about history. Look, on Steyer, I agree that him building that list through the so-called impeachment push was a bit cynical, to say the least. On the other hand, it did help push towards impeachment. I'll take the wins whenever I can get them. And then Bloomberg has been great in fighting for gun control. Now, having said that, all this gets washed away. I don't think Steyer would ever do this, but with Bloomberg, I'm significantly concerned. All this gets washed away if all of this is a cynical attempt to set up a third party run, to pretend some sort of thaw grievance and go, well, if the Democratic Party had been fair to me, I would have backed Bernie Sanders. But since he's the nominee and he's so extremist and they were unfair to me, I guess I'm gonna have to run as a third party candidate, spend $1 billion in advertising, helping my friend Donald Trump so that he could win instead of Bernie and I could keep my tax cuts, which are way more than $1 billion. Hey, look at that, I made money again. If Bloomberg does that, he will be a villain for the ages.
Yeah, if he announces that, it's because he wants Donald Trump to have a second term. So he can put that in his Wikipedia entry at the end of the day if he wants. So the first way that they're manipulating the current primary is through all that advertising that's flooding the early states. But the second way is right now. So The View really liked Pete Buttigieg when he came on the show initially. I don't know if they still support him, but they did early on. Well, he just spent the last couple of days attending high dollar fundraisers in New York City. And so I wish that I could go on The View. I'm an online progressive, so it's never gonna happen. But I would ask them, why do you think that Wall Street was so happy to see Pete Buttigieg? He doesn't have any kind of record. It's not like they're saying, we know what you have accomplished and we think you're the man for the job. He's clearly making promises for the future. And what promises is he making that's making Manhattan millionaires and billionaires so excited to see him? Why is he spending 2 days there? He's not in Iowa, by the way. The money he's making in Manhattan is being used to run ads in Iowa, but he's not spending time in Iowa. So what is that about? If you're feeling fatalistic, well, wait until you have Pete Buttigieg as your nominee. Then you can lock in for no change for quite a while.
Yeah, and to me, the most important point is that whether it's a billionaire who is economically conservative like Bloomberg, just simply buying the government himself, or a number of billionaires and millionaires getting together and buying a Biden or a Buttigieg, really what difference does it make? Biden told wealthy donors, I promise you nothing will fundamentally change. And if you're a millionaire or billionaire, you love that kind of talk. And Biden made it very explicit because he's a poor politician. Buttigieg, on the other hand, gives you great, wonderful, hey, you know what I'll do? I'll tell you that nothing will fundamentally change in Norwegian. Okay, still the same message.
Yeah. Why don't we take our second break? So we got a couple more stories we want to fit in for the rest of the hour.
We'll be right back, guys.